pints in 30 minutes when the beer is being served. All right, how many of you listened to me talk here last year? Oh, quite a few, great. Then I can skip half of the presentation. No, how many have seen it on the video that wasn't here last year? Ah, so there are some people who actually watch our videos, great. Okay, I'm just going to give you a little update from the farm. For those of you who don't know, let's just go through it. I bought a farm in 2015, was the year that I actually bought it legally on paper. But we started working on buying some land from Elias Roa that I buy coffee from in Colombia. So Elias owns Finca el. It was 63 hectares. And he had 7 hectares that was kind of separated on the farm already by fences that he just used for cow grazing. So he offered me to buy that piece of land, basically because he needed a little bit of money to build some infrastructure on his farm, and also because I had been asking him to buy maybe a hectare. So it made sense to just buy this little square of land, and it's down south here in Neiva, or I have to fly to Neiva, and then I have to drive a little bit further south to a little small town called Vital, and then you take another hour up in the mountains there. So from when I leave home in Oslo until I'm on the farm, it takes about 24 hours if I'm really efficient when I travel. Why Colombia? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's the 3rd highest producer in the world in terms of coffee, and also they have great potential, they have great coffees, and the whole country is kind of built around coffee. Like, it's very easy to sell coffee and transport coffee and mill coffee and so on. And also, just because Elias offered me to buy the land, I could buy the land as a foreign person, and I kind of trust him to help me with things that I need help for. So I researched a little bit. I thought I would do organic farming, or maybe a mix with organic and mineral fertilizer. I didn't really know, but then someone tipped me off to check out soil biology, and specifically a lady called Dr. Elaine Ingham. And she has some online classes that you can take. They cost quite a bit of money, but if you're going to farm organically, they are well worth the money. Maybe, we'll see. So I'll just quickly explain what soil biology is, because I've explained it before, and you can see my previous lectures from the Nordic Roaster Forum online, where I explain it more in detail. But it's not too heavy, I think. But basically, we all know that plants kind of produce sugars through photosynthesis, and it utilizes the sun and kind of binds that into sugars. And what we didn't kind of realize until not so long ago is that most of those sugars are actually leached through the roots. So the plant is kind of sweating sugars out of its roots. And why does it do that? It does it to attract microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, and so on. And they start to eat these sugars. And then other guys come around that like to eat bacteria and fungi. Like protozoa can be an amoeba, like soft-bodied animals that are like 1 or 2 cells or more. So they will eat the bacteria, but they need quite a lot of bacteria in order to get the energy they need. But there's a lot of nitrogen in the bacteria, so they take a lot of the carbon, and then they poop out a lot of the nitrogen. And that's kind of how the plant feeds itself. It attracts organisms. Bigger organisms eat the small organisms, they poop out nitrogen, and then the plant can eat that nitrogen. Fungi and bacteria, or especially fungi, can mine a lot of minerals from stones and sand and clay that is in the soil, and kind of keep that in its tubes, and then once other insects come and eat them, those minerals are released, like potassium, phosphorus, and so on. So that's kind of how it works. There's a lot of research behind this, so you can check it out. Just Google soil food web and you'll find a lot of information. The benefits, or supposed benefits, we'll see, behind the system is that, you know, when you fertilize plants with mineral fertilizer, you put on fertilizer maybe 3 times a year, and only 3 nutrients. That's nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Whereas with this system, the plant is kind of fed when it needs to be fed, because the plant is in control of how much sugar it releases and when it releases it, and what kind of organisms it will attract. So instead of being fed 3 times a year, it's being fed every single second. And because of that, you can expect to get higher yields, more quality, like denser beans, lower cost, of course, because they don't have to put on fertilizer. Less pest and disease, because the plant is more healthy. It doesn't only get 3 nutrients, but all the nutrients that it needs. The organisms will actually build structure in the soil, so when it rains, there's a lot of small air pockets where the actual organisms live. And those air pockets, it's like a sponge, so it'll hold a lot of water. But if you don't have the organisms there, which is the case in most agriculture today, when it rains, you'll see a lot of soil erosion, because there's nothing to hold the water. So the water will just wash away the soil. You will store a lot more carbon in the soil, so this is a good thing if you want to take away carbon from the atmosphere, because most of the fungi, that's built of carbon. And it builds miles and miles and miles of tubes, micro, small tubes. Like the mushroom is just the fruit of the fungus. And that's a lot of these tubes mixed together into a shape. So all those are mainly carbon. So you can actually, if we change this system, we could actually reduce climate change, because most of the carbon that is released from the soil. It used to be bound to the soil, and now it's not anymore, because we're plowing the soil, we're killing the organisms by putting on salts, which is the mineral fertilizer. Of course, we don't have to spray pesticides, so the health of the workers is better. I still haven't seen anyone use a mask in Colombia when they spray pesticides. They might use just like a sweater that they kind of take around their face. And you go to the farms and you see all these posters where they're wearing, protecting clothes and stuff, but I've never ever seen it in my now soon 20 years in coffee. Unless you're on like a official SEA trip where you go to the nice farms. Everyone has new rubber boots and so on. So all this is good in theory, but what I'm trying to do is to prove that it actually works also in coffee. There are people using these systems in other types of agriculture, like wine, tomatoes, bananas, and so on. But coffee shouldn't be different. It's just a different plant. All plants are quite equal, but they need different sets of organisms in the soil. So for instance, if you're growing broccoli, you would need much more bacteria in the soil, whereas if you grow coffee, you would need much more fungus in the soil, because coffee is a forest plant, and where do we go to pick mushrooms? In the forest. So here was the land when I bought it. This is how it looked like. It had basically never been touched except from cows. So Elias had around 15 cows that were just walking around and grazing. The problem with that is that they compact the soil when they walk on it, and because they kind of take away vegetation. Yeah, they poop here and there, but kind of take away a lot of vegetation, so there's not a lot of organic material in the soil. This is how it looks like today, unfortunately. I was stupid, but when we decided to plant coffee, the first thing they did was to clear the land. That's what they do in Colombia. They take away all the trees, they plant coffee, and they start fertilizer so they can grow a lot of coffee. And unfortunately, I was kind of learning about soil biology as we started. So, half a year later, I'm like, oh, why did I cut down all the trees? And Elias told me, but you're going to plant new trees. So it's not a problem, but it takes a long time for trees to grow. So this is the current state of the farm, and that's part of the problem, I think. So and also like when it rains here now, like tropical rain is really heavy. It rains a lot, so all the water just the droplets falling on the soil will make the soil compact, and that means the water can't really penetrate the soil anymore because you have like a concrete level there. So what happens, it's hard to see here, but you can see these kind of waves in my land. That's actually water just kind of flushing down the soil, down to the stream at the bottom of the farm. So let's see what I've done in the beginning. In 2014, we started planting seeds, and mainly geisha and typica. Found some very nice tasting typica in Colombia, so I figured, I would plant that. And also geisha goes without saying. And we've also planted some catura. And here's me planting trees. I lasted about 1 day, and then I couldn't get up out of bed the day after. It was very, very tough work for a gringo like me. We planted 8,000 trees in 2015, and it was January 2015. And then 2016 and 17 came. The trees started to look slightly bigger, but quite miserable. And as you can see on the soil here, this is one of the mistakes that I did. I didn't really put any mulch around. Mulch is any kind of organic material. It can be like grass clippings or wood chips, which is very good, or straw is fantastic mulch, anything like that. So it means that the soil is basically just drying out around the plant. So we have long periods with no rain here. Young plants need to drink, and also we had some El Niño periods, so extra dry, no rain. Also a problem, because I learned that having plants in the soil is good because they feed the organisms, and I want more organisms. So I figured, let's not cut the grass around. But we had this very strong grass with strong roots, so they just started competing with the young coffee trees. So they started to get leaf rusts, they started to lose their leaves. And then we had some more seeds that we had planted, so we planted around 1,000 trees more at the end of 2015. We started planting, this is perennial peanut, it's a leguminous plant. And this is great because it will pair with an organism that can produce nitrogen, just from extract the nitrogen from the air and keep it in their bodies, so when their roots die, that nitrogen is released. So you've probably heard about nitrogen fixing plants. It's not the plant that is fixing nitrogen, it's a rhizobium, a bacteria. But they only pair with leguminous plants. So you have to plant those type of plants, like beans, peas, stuff like that. And then those bacteria, if they're present, will start to form these kind of nodules, like a small ball, marble ball, like you can see on the roots. When you cut those open, there will be like blood red inside, and that's that bacteria. The problem was, I showed this last year as well, but I think it's really funny. These ants really love perennial peanuts. So they come and they eat the leaves, and they actually produce fungus that they can eat. And the problem with that is that you can't put some poison on the ground, because they won't eat the poison. So they will take the leaves. And this was a citrus tree that I planted this year, and the day after it looked like this. So, there's some challenges. So now it's 2017, end of 2017. I'm starting to realize, okay, I have to, I'm losing a lot of plants. I got to start making more compost, because the only stuff that I need to put on is actually organisms. That's what's lacking in my soil. And the way to get more organisms in the soil is to grow organisms, and you just do that by making great compost. So you can make compost in a million different ways. I just use the ingredients that are available on the farm, and mainly woody material like wood chips, because the fungus likes to grow on that. So it takes about 2 weeks to make a pile from start to finish, and then it'll kind of cool down, and after a couple of months it'll be ready to use. So in the beginning I just made one of these for the whole farm, because I'm stupid. And now I'm making at least 4, but much bigger piles every time I'm there. But you don't really need to just put on the compost. You can also just extract the organisms in the compost into water and then spray it on the plant. So that's the technique that we're using the most. Another problem back in 2017, it sounds so long ago now, but we were not treating the farm as kind of we were treating the farm as a whole holistic place. So we were spraying the whole farm, and you can imagine how much time that takes when you have 20 liters on your back trying to spray this manually, and we have 3 of those. So that didn't really work. We didn't see any results at all, actually. So 2018, I come down in February, beginning of February, and I had 400 trees that I had grown again, some geisha seeds that I got from a secret source. So they were already like baby trees, so we planted them. But because I lost a lot of the 9,000 trees that I had planted already, we now have 600 trees left. So that sounds brutal, but that's the reality of being a farmer. Of course, if I had put salts or mineral fertilizer on, I probably would have had, at least 70% of the trees that I planted originally. This is how my new trees are looking. And notice the difference between the trees that I showed you before. Like here we have a lot of mulch around. It's still not enough, But you would be surprised how difficult it is to get wood chips in Colombia. There's trees everywhere, and people cut them down, but they burn them. They don't really. So even the carpenters are struggling to get enough wood to make, planks and stuff. So we have a network of carpenters now that will call us whenever they have wood chips, and I prefer to use the coarser stuff because that degrades slower. So the good thing about the wood chips is that it will keep moisture. Fungus will start to grow underneath, and every time I'm, visiting each tree and kind of cleaning the little hole in the middle, you'll see a lot of spiders and stuff underneath there, which is great because they eat organisms. The ring should probably be much bigger with mulch, and so I just asked Elias to get me 500 bags of mulch until I come in October. I've been buying like 50 bags at a time every time and putting them on manually. So this is how the hillside looks with our geisha, which are mainly the new trees, the 400 new trees. So you can see small individual holes. You didn't see that, previously. So instead of treating the whole farm as a kind of, we got to kind of improve the whole soil of the whole farm. We're now just kind of treating it as a microzone around each tree. So this is what you would do if you were growing apples or vines or almonds. You treat one tree as kind of a baby and nurse it. And here's how it looks like a little closer. Another mistake that I made in 2017 is when I was mulching, I was putting wood chips all the way into the tree. Because I wanted to cover the whole soil. But the problem then is the roots. It's hard to see here, but you can see some roots here. They start to grow up in the mulch. So that means when you have dry periods, they can't access any water because the mulch will dry. The soil underneath will be moist, but then the roots aren't there. So this is a big mistake that I made. Tiny little details that, it's hard to get this information. People say you just put a lot of mulch around your tree and it'll behave great. And then you do that and then they all die. Like, why? It's because of these small details. So every time I have a agronomist coming, I try to kind of get as much information as I can. And we go to visit my farm and they laugh a little bit, organic. But I used to be that person before. When they came to the farm, I would laugh at them, mineral fertilizer. So I'm kind of adjusting to actually learning from the experts now. Another thing that we started with in this year is to make compost extract, and it's basically just stirring compost into water, and then you remove the solids afterwards. So we use a tea bag for it. We call it compost extract because we extract organisms. So we make, before I had to make like 7 buckets of this to spray the whole farm, and now we make 1 bucket, and that will cover all the trees. So we do this every week now. And the good thing about that is that, maybe the compost I make isn't the best one, and is lacking some of the organisms that I need, but at least the trees are getting small doses of water every week. And we've had very, very long periods with no rain this year. And I can tell because I have a weather station that I go in online every day and see, has it rained today? Has it rained? And it might be raining, but it's raining very small amounts at a time, and we're expecting the wet season to start now. So hopefully things will start getting green again. But after I started doing this, and I also started mulching better, I could start seeing mushrooms growing in the mulch. And you see all this white stuff here. That's actually fungus. That's the tubes that I'm talking about. And we call it mycorrhizal fungus because they actually pair with the roots of the plant. And they start growing far away, and they start to find food for the plants. And in return, the plant will give it sugar. So this is kind of a symbiosis relationship where the fungus feeds the plant and the plant feeds the fungus. And most plants will be colonized by these fungi. It's very hard to say fungi in plural. Unless you kill them, if you put salts on the ground, we preserve food with salt, so that's how you kill microorganisms. So when you start putting mineral fertilizer on the soil, these are the first things to go, because they dry out, and then you don't have that relationship anymore, and then the plants need more mineral fertilizer to survive. So this is actually the first time that and this picture was taken in August, this is the first time that I've seen a lot of the plants getting these colonies of fungi. Then Gilberto, are you still here? Yeah. Gilberto told me, oh, you need to plant some row crops because it will give temporary shade because my shade trees won't grow, So we put some row crops, and then one of the agronomists just gave me a big bag of seeds of a plant called Tephrosia, which is a leguminous plant, and it's supposed to grow really fast. Except nothing likes to grow on my farm, so they don't. Yeah, we lost maybe 70% of it, but in some areas it's growing well. And then Gilberto told me, you need to plant pigeon pea, because pigeon pea doesn't need a lot of water, and Gilberto has a very, very dry farm. And I went there in March, maybe, and I could see the pigeon pea was just growing like crazy, and the soil was super dry. So that's what we're doing at the moment, actually. Probably this week they're going to start planting much more rows in between the coffee with this pigeon pea, because they will grow very fast and then give some shade to the trees. And they also are leguminous, so we can get nitrogen into the soil. We tried twice to plant clover and sunflower,